All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the Games User Research Salary Survey for 2024. I'm Jonathan Dankoff. Here we've got Andrew Menger-Ogle with us, and also part of our committee that run the salary survey is Seb Long, who will be available for questions and answers, but will not be in this presentation. Andrew?
Hi.
All right, let's jump right in. First, I got a couple notes to talk about the data set that we have this year and how to use this information, and then we'll go into the results. So first, this year we got 222 qualified responses, which is great. It's far back up from last year. Those of you who recall what happened last year got a little lazy, and we did not push as hard to get people to share it or to answer the survey. It led to a dip in the number of responses, and that led to a less accurate model and some locations that we were unable to accurately report on. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to respond, and I want to double thank everyone who took the time to share and forward the address to ensure that we got those responses back up to where they needed to be. So thanks again for your help. Next, some other notes about the salaries reported, right? So everybody who answered the survey in their local currency, but then we, during analysis, converted it over to US dollars. That makes it easier for comparison, makes it easier for analysis, easier for a lot of things. But it does mean that when you are looking at the results, you need to make sure to do the labor of thinking back and working backwards into your local currency. So, for example, if you live in a country in Europe and you see the number, that number is a US dollars amount, and you need to make sure that you're considering how that's reflected in your local currency. The other thing that's very important here is to recognize also that that number is an average salary. It does not take into account things like cost of living or many of the other geographic factors that will influence salary, that will influence decision-making around the job-seeking process. There is a lot of complexity around that, obviously radically out of scope for us as part of the salary survey, but exceptionally important for you as you're thinking about how you want to make decisions around where you work and how much you get paid. So those are very important. But up to you. Let's get into it now then. First things first, we go by location. So this is the section about where you work. First thing that's important to talk about is the location count, right? So looking at where all of the respondents of our survey are from. You can see here, I think, a pretty good split across the locations as we track them. We've been tweaking these locations slightly over time to try to make sure that we get decent buckets. We've got a good cross-section here of people in North America and Europe. With regards to the rest of the world, we do have to put those folks together in order to make them a single bucket because there's not enough of them individually from locations. But I do think it's interesting to point out that we have folks from Argentina, Australia, Chile, New Zealand, and Singapore. And hopefully, as our discipline continues to grow, we see more folks from those regions, we can start to spread this map out and get a better cross-section of those folks outside of North America and Europe. Now, here we go. This is, I think, the slide everyone waits for, but this is the median salary by region. So if we take all the people reported their salary who gave us their remuneration information and we chart it out simply by location, this is what we get. Again, recall, this is in US dollars only, and also very importantly, does not include bonuses. This is just a straight up median minus bonuses. Bonuses tend to be quite highly variable across different things, and so we don't include it here in this median, but Andrew will talk about how it is available in the model a little bit later. And speaking of the model, Andrew, can you explain what is going on the left side there with the percentages?
Yeah, sure. So what you see there is a list of regions that we had broken out within the model, and then a percentage. And so what you can how you can understand that percentage is, well, you see that Pacific Northwest is listed as 100%. That's the reference region. So we're using that as the reference because it had the most people. And so California says 97%, US South 67, Quebec is 52, France and Germany is 40%. So how you'd understand that, if you see the fine print below, it says controlling for position level, that's like seniority, years of experience in games or non-games, user research, organization type, and education. So what that's saying is that if somebody was if you had one person in the Pacific Northwest and you had another person in France and Germany, and they had the same position, the same years of experience, the same organization type, like they both worked in a publisher, and they both had master's degrees. Everything else being even, you would expect the person in France or Germany to be making 40% of what the person in the Pacific Northwest would be making.
All right, thanks for that explanation. Let's keep it going. So here I mentioned we took bonus, didn't show them in that one, but I do want to give a sense of what bonuses look like for the people in the field. And so, yeah, they vary widely, but they are reflected in the model. So if you would like to get an approximation of what your total salary will look like, you can do that there. I also want to point out that bonuses tend to be a larger portion of total compensation as seniority increases. And so that also will change there. Looking at the sort of the chart here, you can see that about 20% of folks get no form of bonus whatsoever. And then the ones below that don't add up to 100, right? Because it's possible to get performance bonus and project and overtime or stocks. But the majority of people are getting some sort of performance bonus. Generally, you'd assume that to be annually. About a fifth are getting a project bonus. Just under 10% get paid overtime. And then a little under a third are getting stocks or options. And so the combination of those is up to, you know, can vary and differ. And again, this is something that'll be very important for you to understand for your total compensation as it is compared to your base salary, total comp, and then other things that are included in your total comp, like other benefits and other things. These are all make up your total compensation package. And it's up to you to do the legwork to understand which ones of those are important for you. Are willing to take more risk? Are you desirous of, you know, certain different parts of that package? But we can get you part of the way there to understanding what's available. When we look at junior salary, this is one of, I think, the most important slides in the salary survey every year, because juniors tend to have less understanding of, you know, what their compensation might be like, whereas folks who've been around longer can have a better sense. And so we did need to reshuffle a little bit some of the categories to make sure that we met the minimum barrier that we use for PII of 5 folks per bucket. But there you have them there. And the other thing that's important to point out is this is the sort of junior term here is based on self-report. We didn't use like years of experience or anything like that. This is really if you put yourself in the choice for that question as an entry level, a moderator, or an assistant, we considered that junior. And so that's how these get broken out. Those are the salaries as the median salaries. When we looked at organization type, we see here that the very large majority of games user researchers are working in a publisher or one of those publisher studios, in a platform holder or in one of those platform holder studios. Similar to the sort of tweaking that we've done in the past with the regions, I think that it's clear from this response this year that we need to start looking at maybe splitting up central side versus studio side researchers within these larger organizations to get a better picture of how those play out within the organization type. And then on the right here, Andrew, do you want one more time to explain real quick how these graphs work?
Yeah, sure. So again, I tended to use the most populated category as the reference. So publishers got the most people, so that's the 100%. And then on the top, that's the base salary model. The bottom is the total compensation model. So that's a little bit different. And so, you know, like a person working in a platform held studio would make 4% more than a person, the publisher held studio, if everything else were the same, including region. Now, Johnny's got freelance individual on the left-hand side. You don't see that on my charts because I used 10 as a cutoff for inclusion in the model. And that's just to improve performance. And so, yeah, freelance individual, if you were that person, well, I'll get into how I built the model later, but that is not an available input for the model.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Now let's talk about how people get prepared to enter the discipline. What's the preparation look like? So when we look at education by degree, you can see that just under half of people in games user research in our field are holding a master's degree, and then just over 20% are holding a PhD. And then on the right, you can see its effect on the model. When looking at education by field, you can see that a large majority of people entering the discipline are either in the psychology, social science, or user experience fields. But then when it comes to median salary, there is a preference, or sorry, a higher salary for folks who entered through the neuroscience discipline. And this is not a part of the model. And so this is one way of looking at it here under this optic, but specific educational field is not a part of the model. When we get into years experience, you see a nice distribution here is what you'd expect. But it's good to see that about 15% of folks are brand new to the discipline. So we're still bringing in that new talent. And then a 10% of people that have 10 years or more. And so people sticking around and enjoying their careers, just a nice distribution there is good to see, healthy discipline. When we talk about how people are defining their roles now, and those effects on their salary, again, similarly here you see a distribution across from entry level to mid level to senior and high level or upper management for research teams, and a commensurate upgrade with their salaries, which I think is pretty intuitively obvious. Moving on to gender and identity. So an important one for us to check. We like to make sure that we are covering this every year. For a number of reasons. But you can see here that when we split the industry, at least for those who responded to the survey, we have just over 53% of men, just over 40% of women, and then a 5-ish% of non-binary folks, which, as usual, beats the industry standard by quite a substantial margin. And then below that, you can also see how we are tracking for people from underrepresented groups, self-reported. And then most importantly, and Andrew will explain this again in a little bit, but when he checks the model to see if gender or being a part of an underrepresented group have any effect on the outcomes, it does not appear to be significant. Now, that obviously is not to say that there is no evidence of bias whatsoever across our discipline. I wouldn't go out and say that on a limb, but it does mean that the way that our data set is presenting salary information, it doesn't contribute to the model, which, at least on its face, seems pretty positive as a result. Every year, we like to dip into a couple of sort of zeitgeisty topics, make sure that we're covering sort of the things that people are interested in with regards. Some of them dip a little further outside of salary, but important for us to cover as a group, so we go into them. The first is we like to see, this one here is just, what types of stuff are you making? How's our the products that we're working on evolving? And so you can see, and this I think may be partly sampling bias, maybe not, but the very large majority of us are in the console, PC, and cloud gaming space. So, what we would call sort of traditional big games. 30% are also or only working on mobile games, right? So these are, they're not distinct. You could be working on both, but so obviously, but most people that work in either mobile or AR are likely also working on console games. When we look at the primary business model, so you can see most folks working on premium or box product, but a very large amount, almost 2/3 working on game as a service, almost a quarter working on free to play, and then nearly 15% working on subscription games. So there is people working on games within different business models here within this group. Obviously, this year we had to ask about the use of AI, and I know that the text there on the left is pretty small, so I'll walk you through it. The most important thing here is the two largest bars at 43% and 28% respectively are that we are either optimistically investigating if they can help us in the future, but they're not fully integrated yet, or we're tentatively exploring them and seeing if they'll work for us, but we're being careful still. And so I think that is reflective of the majority of games user researchers right now, is like, we're thinking about it, we're trying it out. Only 5% of games researchers said, like, no, we're actively pursuing this, like, very aggressively, and it's part of our workflows. We're making it part of the way that we work. And then only 15% were either unaware or uninvolved, and 2% were like aggressively against it. And then when we asked folks, how did they see it affecting their discipline, what it broke down as on the right is many felt that it would help them streamline their operations of the more sort of rote tasks that researchers accomplish, stuff like coding and speeding up report writing and some of this sort of simpler labor type stuff, freeing them up to do more interesting work. That leads into the next point of job security, that if it is freeing up people to do other work, does that mean that this is going to disproportionately affect juniors, or is it going to be used for cost cutting? Does it mean that now research teams will be asked to do twice as much work with the same amount of people, or will they be asked to cut into half as many people to do the same amount of work? There was some fear around that. Many folks mentioned that the impact on quality without oversight could lead to poor results, that this is a tool like another tool, but you've got to be careful about exactly how you deploy it, because it can trick folks into thinking that it's better than it is, and you need to make sure that you have quality oversight. On that angle, also, there were snake oil salesmen. So being very mindful of shady AI pushers who are trying to sell synthetic participants, which people are worried don't work very well, or they might devalue the field. And I think the sort of resounding summary for all of this AI stuff was that really it's just an augmentation and another tool. That seemed to be how most people were feeling about it, that like similarly to like a calculator or an Excel sheet, it's something that we can deploy to work faster in the places where it works, and just being mindful of how you use it carefully for effect is the path forward. On the next topic, very important this year, was the topic of layoffs. So layoffs were pretty rampant throughout the year and had a very large impact on people within our discipline and within the games industry as a whole. And so when we asked folks if they were affected, you can see on the chart on the left, more than half of people were either directly affected personally within their company or on their team. And that caused, as you can imagine, a significant amount of stress. So when we asked them about the impact, what folks responded was, first, that it was extremely difficult for them from a mental health perspective with regards to anxiety, stress, morale. And then even folks that weren't affected felt that they were struggling with survivor's guilt, that they got to stick around when their brilliant colleagues had to be let go. And so that took an enormous toll on most of the people that you can see in our discipline. Also, the question of workload was an issue here, where staff reductions meant that more people had to do, or fewer people had to do more responsibilities, and this is affecting the quality and the output and the timelines. At a sort of bigger picture, there's also the uncertainty that job security brings in. People are worried about being either next or worried about their longevity within this within the business that they love and that they want to work in, and wondering if there's a career there long term. And then from the flip side of that one, at the end here, is the hiring challenge. That now for hiring managers who are trying to either rebuild or want to bring in more talent, it's becoming difficult because of either hiring freezes, or they're not being allowed to backfill or internally promote, which is causing more people to bounce, or the enormous amount of candidates applying for every open job is making it very difficult to find the right profiles that people are looking for. And it's making it more difficult for hiring managers to reach the right people for the right jobs. Moving something a little bit more upbeat is our job satisfaction. For those who are in the discipline, as always, we can see a very high satisfaction score for people that are working as games user researchers right now. And so, more than 4 out of 5 people in this job are satisfied or above. So that's great to hear. When we ask them how we could improve it, what people talk about, some of the classics, I think some of these have been repeated for a few years as we've done this salary survey, but it's, people are looking for better career development. They want better advancement opportunities, clear paths. They want better post-senior options. So there's a lot of few people that feel they're being pushed into management track when really they would love to stay as ICs, but with the recognition that comes with their seniority. With regards to money, people would like, especially with the rise of hybrid work and remote work, a better salary leveling across regions and industries, and a disappearance of the pass-in tax that, people getting paid less in video games than in other adjacent industries that are also doing UXR. With regards to visibility and value, folks want a bigger seat at the table. So they want more recognition of the type of work that user researchers do, and the amount of input we can have on more strategic planning and decision-making, as opposed to more granular, game design issues. And they want our C-suite to understand better what it is that we do and how we contribute. Standardizing in education, this one comes from both angles. Some folks would, some more junior folks would love better training materials to on-ramp easier, and also hiring managers would love their juniors to be better trained to enter the workforce. And so better standardization in education there would be nice. We can always do more work on inclusion and diversity, making sure that our leaderships are more diverse, and also at the entry level, hiring less hardcore gamers and giving more room to diverse perspectives as we hire and bring new people in. And last but not least, improving work-life balance by reducing crunch and creating healthier, less toxic work environments that are more friendly to the people day to day that are working on them. And with that, I'm going to leave it to Andrew. He's going to explain to you how his model works, how you can use it for yourself, where to find the calculator. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Johnny. Okay, so what I want to go through is give you some details about sort of the process of building the model, the statistics behind it, and like Johnny said, kind of show you what that calculator would look like and how you can access it. I will say it's not necessary for you to understand the statistics behind the model in order to use it, but in the interest of transparency, I do want to put that out for folks. I would say the biggest change between how I built the model this year and in previous years is I made the switch from SPSS to R. Here I use the Leaps package, which allowed me to do a stepwise or a forward stepwise linear regression. That's the same as what I've used in the past. So if you remember those explanations, there I was looking at the change in the F statistic between one model and the next model. If we were to add an additional variable, is that going to improve the model statistically significantly? Here we're using a different criterion. I'm going to use AIC. This is a criterion that tells you, like how much additional error is being removed from the model, or how much additional are we explaining, and are we doing it efficiently? So that is what that criterion says. And I will actually kind of show you that in a second. But actually, first, let me note this right here. So these are the predictor variables that were eligible to be included in the model. All the classics. We have region, position or seniority level, education, years of experience. Games and non-games were separate. Gender, membership of an underrepresented group, contractor status, and work function. So those were all eligible. And now let me remove that. So let's take a look at the output that we would get from R. All right, so these are the different steps. I said it was stepwise, and that's what we get. So this is step one, and step one, it's just, hey, base salary, we're gonna try to predict it with no predictors at all. And so they kind of just draw a line through all the data. And here our AIC is -207. And then listed here are all those variables I just mentioned. And then these are all saying, if we were to include this particular predictor, what would the AIC become for that next model? And these are always organized with the best predicting or best performing variable at the top. So here we can drop that from -207 to -294 if we add a region. So that's what it does. And it moves on to step two. So step two says, okay, this model includes just region. What's the next best one that we could add? Oh, if we add seniority, that'll drop us down to -405. So we do that. And then it's saying, oh, the next one is years of experience in games user research. Now these can shuffle around as new variables are added. Work function is a bit higher here, and then it's lower down here. And that's just because that some unique information that would have been addressed by work function, maybe that's been taken care of by seniority, for example. So, if your work function is management, and we know that you're a director, it's like those seniority is giving us that information that work function would have given us. So anyway, you can just see how this progresses along. Each step we add a new variable. Here we add GRUX, then we're going to add non-GRUX, years experience, then organization type, and finally the next step is education. And after education is going to be none. So the addition of any other variables or predictors is actually not going to help the performance. The AIC is going to rise. So that's where we finish the model. Let me clear this off. So if you were to just kind of take the information next to each of these circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's what I'm putting in these tables here. What is the new variable? What is the AIC? And where do we stop? So here we use the 7th model of education. That includes education plus all of these. The adjusted R-square is 7.3 for a base salary. Over here is total compensation. It's the same variables. Contractor, underrepresented, work function, and gender do not improve the model beyond that. Total compensation adjusted R-square is 0.75. As a reminder, or just so you have some intuition about what that means, when we're building the model, each of these dots represents a survey that somebody filled out. Of course, this would only be like one predictor. In reality, we have 7 predictors, so this would be a multi-dimensional chart, which, you know, now we're getting into, I don't know, some Lovecraftian stuff there, but we're not going to get into that. Just know that we can do it with math. The model is the line. And so basically, the better the R-square, the closer the dots are to the line, which basically means the line does a better job of accurately predicting what any of these data points would be. So the closer we get to 1, the closer the dots are to the line. So this is 0.9, 0.5, 0.2. And our models were both around 0.73 and 0.75. So now you got an idea about how well the model did this year. So what are some kind of data points about the model itself? The inputs, I know Johnny had said, you know, what we had 220 some valid responses. I couldn't include 220 in the model. That is up to, or 171. So we lose around 50, but that is up 50 from last year, which is great. And so why aren't those in the model? So we had some exclusion criteria, and that's basically missing data is a huge thing. So if you didn't report your salary, if you didn't report bonuses or explicitly say that you had 0 there, or so you wouldn't be included in the model. If one of those predictors was missing, if you didn't state what your education was, then we couldn't include you in the model. If you reported that your annual base salary was less than $10,000 USD, that's excluded, just because trying to have a catch for mistyping, you know, if somebody said they made $600, then it's kind of an apples and oranges. Maybe you're not working full-time or something. And then also, if you're a member of a group that's got less than 10 respondents. So some regions, you know, maybe you're from a country and there was only one of you, or some organization types, like if you're in academia, you wouldn't be included in the model. And that's just because your data point would become kind of too powerful to have too much influence. So we have a calculator. This is what it looks like, nearly identical to previous years. And it's essentially, if you put in your values in these drop-down boxes for region, position level, years of experience, organization type, and education, then it will give you your predicted base salary. You do the same thing for total comp. It gives you your predicted total comp. So that's a Google form. You want to download it to use it, and we'll get that link for you soon. You can find the link on the Discord channel. In the future, I'm sure Johnny and I will be attending this talk in person, and so if there's any like additional details, we can provide it then. What you want to do again is download it. A note here: you can put in some nonsense in the calculator, like you could say that, you know, you're a managing director, but you have 0 years experience. You could do that. The model will give you a number, but that does not disprove the model. It's just a calculator, right? What else? And you have to have input something into all of those drop downs. if there is not a value in the drop down that represents your situation, then if you want to use the calculator, you'll need to enter something that is the closest approximation to that. So like if you have a high school degree and you want to just say bachelor's for the sake of bachelor's, like we didn't have 10 people who had a high school degree, so that's not in education. I'm fine with that. You know, it's still going to get you a pretty good number. So finally, here's a disclaimer. You'll see this on the calculator page, but I want to really spell this out for everyone so we're on the same page. What this value means, that number that gets output. It's not like here's the amount of money that you should make or the amount of money that's fair or any of that. Here's what it means. It means this is this predicted value produced by the calculator is an empirically derived best guess at what the base salary or the total compensation would be for a person who has all the characteristics entered into the calculator's drop-down boxes. And so if you put that in, like your value might be higher than that number, it might be lower than that number. It's just to kind of give you a benchmark about what's typical. And also note the model is based on self-reported data from the game's user research community. And so those dots that we saw on those kind of R-square illustrations, those represent, real people and their situations. So you're going to be one of those dots too, and it's going to be above or below that line. Like that's just how it is. The model is that prediction line. So that's all the details I have about the model. I'm sure we'll elaborate more on how to find that calculator. If you do have any notes, we do have a Discord channel that is just all about the GUR Salary Survey. So we'll try to keep tabs on that. And, we appreciate you all kind of being willing to disclose this information. It is personal information, and we try to get as much value for you and the community as we can and keep it going. So we thank you for that. And then Johnny, I got one more slide.
Final, the big surprise, the one more thing. We are launching today the new salary survey. So you can head over to www.gamesuraSalarySurvey.com and fill it out. One of the advantages of it, the results arriving a little late this year, is that it's right in time to start the next one. Hooray! So, strike while the iron is hot. That survey will be up at whatever future moment this video is being played at. And make sure when you're done filling it out, please, again, very important to us, the number one way that this gets around is by sharing. So share it with your colleagues, share it with your friends across the discipline. Tag them again the second time, be like, hey, did you fill it out? It's really helpful. And then depending on how, where things shape up, hopefully we see you around this time or earlier next year to discuss the newest results. But yeah, once again, thank you very much from me and Andrew and Seb. We're glad we could do this for you. Take care. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.